Welcome everyone to Politics Theory Other Interregnum. For the first time ever in the history of this show, I am the host. Alex Doherty is in the hot seat. Alex, the inevitable, the inimitable, the illimitable, the inquisitor. Normally he's the one asking me the questions. Now I get to put your questions to him for one day only. Okay, Alex, we have about 24 questions here.
We have a lot of questions, yeah, we do.
And we are going to go through them, but you would have to be considerably more concise than I am in order to get through them all.
I don't think that will be a problem. I don't think that's going to be a difficulty, to be honest.
Fuck you. All right. So
it's not a comment on you, really, but yeah, anyway, sorry, go on.
All right, no worries. Okay, so first question is from Leo Casarani, sorry. It would be great to find out more about the genesis of PTO. From my point of view, it appeared to have burst onto the British Left podcast scene fully formed, with brilliant guests and conversations from the very start. I appreciate it was a very different time in UK politics, but how did the podcast come to be, and why were there no signs of a learning curve in its production? Alex, can you answer that?
Yes, the show started in 2018. So at the time, I was working for a small lefty publisher, was really sort of hating my job. I was mostly doing publicity and I wasn't remotely suited to doing that. I was trying to think of something that I'd like to do really as a hobby. I mean, I didn't at the time imagine that PTO would end up being something I would be doing as a job. So sometime before I was working for the publisher, I was working on this thing with a bunch of friends and comrades, I suppose, called New Left Project, which was a sort of comment and analysis website, which was running from 2010 to 2015. And the idea with that was, there was a number of things, but it was partly to try and make sort of academic writing, or people who are working in academia, make their work a bit more accessible to a broader audience. So we had a lot of writers who were academics, and we interviewed a lot of those people. It wasn't exclusively that. We did stuff that was more sort of, from and oriented towards activism, but that was certainly part of it. And that, I think, definitely fed into PTO, partly in terms of, I had a bit of experience doing interviews. Those weren't audio interviews. It was all things that we transcribed. And back then it was really transcribing. You had to sort of sit down, and it took you hours and hours to do it. But that probably helped a little bit. And then also just the people I knew through that. So I was, I guess, quite well placed to do something like PTO because I, had quite a good sort of bunch of contacts. And so it wasn't hard to arrange interviews with most of the people that I wanted to interview. I mean, I would slightly quibble with this idea that there was no learning curve. I mean, I had to listen back to a couple of the very early interviews, and they are incredibly stilted. I mean, I'm not sure how smooth my introductions particularly are even now, but back then it was really, really not great. But I mean, one other thing to say about the start of PTO was that there really wasn't a lot like it around at the time. So there was Novara, which was already a very different thing. It was, they were doing video. It was a much bigger thing. And I also think at the time it kind of came across as very sort of young people oriented. I think obviously that's changed over time, and as the sort of key people involved have got older, but it had this kind of explicitly sort of slightly edgy vibe. They'd be doing their videos whilst drinking beer and this kind of thing. And I did sort of want PTO to be a little bit kind of Radio 4 of the left. I wanted it to be a sort of drier thing, and thinking about people I knew, my sister was not going to watch or listen to something called Tisky Sour. That just wasn't going to happen. I mean, as it turns out, she also doesn't listen to PTO, but the intention was to make it a bit more kind of, like I say, a little bit dry and maybe accessible to a slightly less overtly left and young audience.
So we don't want any young people listening to this podcast.
No. If you're younger than 35, please stop listening.
And it's a bit like the Stuart Lee of podcasts. We don't like new people.
Yeah, we don't want people coming. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
If you'd like to hear the rest of this episode of PTO Extra, then please consider becoming a £5 supporter of the show on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/poletheoryother to sign up.